It's 4:29. Are you upset, Donna, that the house is not filled for your presentation? Like,
Not at all.
standing room only?
No, that's, no.
We're not offended.
Can't take these things personally.
I tell you.
Everybody will get it on the rerun.
You'll come on the reason.
Come back in about an hour and a half and wait till you see what we got here.
You can't toss that on the floor.
Well, what do you say? What do you say? Let's
go.
Let's do it. Well, the matinee version of the town board workshop for Thursday, July 28th, and this is pretty typical when we do the budget workshops that they start at 4:30 in the afternoon. And our first presenter is Donna Komar from the assessment department.
Maybe we should run through the schedule. So
Oh,
tonight,
would you mind doing that?
yeah,
I'm off
tonight
my
we're gonna
game
have
today.
Donna presenting the assessment budget, then I'll do finance, it'll be followed by human resources by Brayden Connor, the police, parks and recreation, and the justice court. So Donna's gonna kick us off.
Thank you, Paul.
Assessing.
Okay, thank you. Now, what do you want me to do, Paul? Just go through line by line?
You could just hit the highlights, I mean,
Here are the highlights. So salaries are determined by contract in the town boards. How about we start on capital purchases, which is the .2 line.
it's good.
Capital purchases, you're in for
It's 0.
0. Yeah, oh, the columns were reversed, yes. So 0. Last year we had budgeted for a copier, it's on order, so thank you for that. And we don't plan to make any capital purchases in 2023.
Maybe you should explain your compensation for employees, because you always have different combinations of part-time and full-time.
A lot of the lines haven't changed that much, have they? What is the most significant change that I see up there is the full-time employees. And we now have on staff a full-time certified New York State residential appraiser. So that is a little bit above what we had on budget last year, and that's the difference there between the 158 and the 165. Okay. Then going down to the contractual expenses. Oh, .2, the computer equipment. That is new. You're going to hear that in probably most of the presentations. Items that used to be in the IT department have been segregated out then into the individual departments, so you can see which departments are now affording which items. So my $5,900 request is part of what I think would have typically been in the IT department. Is that what I'm looking at?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, there's another $5,900. My eyes just fell to my own page here. It's in a different order.
And that includes software licensing fees
And
as well
two
as the cost
PCs.
to replace any computers.
Right. Okay. That was a different place on your page. I'm sorry that I did it.
All right.
Next is memberships, and we're just going to bump that a little bit. We're changing membership fees year upon year. Our deeds are pretty much stable from year over year. Computer expenses, that's generally our toner expenses and that. The 406 this year represents the ongoing maintenance agreement for the new copier that is on order right now. So it's just going to cover our expenses for that one item. Supplies are down a little bit because we had the extra purchases last year, so this is more typical at $2,500. Staff training and conferences is up just because the price of some of our one-day seminars and things have gone up, and I've added a little bit to make sure that our appraisers fees qualify, satisfies the educational requirements for the state of New York. Contractual services for $800. That is an outside vendor that helps us refresh our data from one database to another database so that we can set up the appointment scheduling that we do for our senior citizens and our renewable exemptions. That way we are keeping them socially distanced instead of just letting them form a line at will, as sometimes has happened before COVID. And we find that most people are actually appreciating that service of that scheduler, so thank you for your support in the past in getting that program created for us. This is just the year-upon-year maintenance agreement. Appraisal and legal contractual. That is to afford the attorney's times and other things that come up with the assessment litigation. And that's a reactionary thing. We haven't spent too much last year, so I'm hoping we can spend just a little less. I'm budgeting a little less, hoping it will be just fine. On a reassessment line, these are the types of items that we are affording to try to avoid that $1.7 million figure that we've been talking about. So this is each year we're going to be doing a little bit of something that will cost us a little bit to update our data. Next year we hope to update our neighborhood codes and our land tables. We're working on reviewing all the inventory right now for our commercial properties. And as you know, the assessment roll runs from mid-year to mid-year. So anytime the assessment roll includes any kind of a project that's going to involve financing, it will always overlap on two budgets, part in one year, part in another. So this is us just trying to get the expertise and advice in from the outside for things that would have a price tag associated with it that would afford us to get our data situated for a time where we could revalue our properties. The software maintenance contracts is up significantly because we will be taking some of our software as was requested. We have included in this budget hosting agreements for some of the things that our IT department has been doing in-house. So our online image make online on our website is going to be hosted now by the company that gives us that product, as well as some other things. What else did I have in there? I'm asking for some tools which the public can use to verify the data that they have on their homes, and they're going to be attached to our website. So that's one of the price increases there. And we need an additional license now for the sketching software for the appraiser. Yeah, so there's a couple of new softwares there. Vehicle operation, lease expense. As you know, we've gone to, town board has gone to a fleet management type of philosophy as opposed to straight up ownership of our vehicles. We have one vehicle in our department. The 1800 is anticipatory of next fall acquiring our own through that fleet maintenance process. What we'll be doing in the short term between now and then is taking our very old vehicle and trading that in against some of the new vehicles for other employees. And I'll be acquiring one of their older vehicles, which is newer than mine, to bridge for the next year. And that just kind of gives us the opportunity to put off one vehicle out just one more year.
It's a good plan.
Thank you. And then the maintenance for the $1,000 is to maintain that old vehicle that I'll be having that's a little bit newer than the one I have, but still going to need some maintenance over the course of the year. And then just put a flat $1,000 in there just because I don't know the history on that, what it might need. Any questions I can answer for anyone?
Yeah, so year to year, we have your budget actually decreasing about 3,000. I would call it flat.
Yeah, the only question I had was, can you go to all the other department heads and have them do that? Have a budget for 23 that's a couple $1,000s less than 22?
Mine is much more simplistic compared to other departments. So I'd be happy to share whatever it is you think that I know, but I don't know their budget, so can't guarantee the same result.
Well, you did a nice job with yours.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank
What
you.
year was the last assessment we had in Webster?
2004 was the last townwide revaluation.
When are you projecting another townwide assessment?
We don't have a date on a townwide revaluation, but we are looking at other things that we could do to position ourselves to get there. And until I have that definite approval from the state of New York to do things just a little bit different, which I think will make it much more cost effective and much more palatable to our public. I'm not speaking about that publicly because I want to make sure that I have their blessings and that their input is part of that. But you can look forward to that in future conversations in the very near future.
Okay.
Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, I have memory issues lately. Now, I do know that Bill Abbott is the liaison to assessment.
Yes.
That I know. And we've had conversations, the three of us, about that strategy you have with the state, which I think is a very good strategy, to somewhat avoid the, I hate to use the word shock and awe of a total reval, that can upset the community,
Right.
whatever, that if you get certain acknowledgements from the state, that we may in a near future workshop have you present what, the strategy that you have and how to execute it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
In no way, shape, or form do I intend to keep anything secretive. We are very transparent in our office. From what I know of all the rules that govern us, I don't know the rules of the other departments very well, but I do find that our department is very transparent by law in so many ways. And I'm very grateful for that in many ways. So I'll be very happy to educate you. The reason that I'm not saying anything yet is I don't want to start a conversation when we find out that the state says, no, we don't like that plan and we want you not to go left, please go right, to be vague on purpose. And I don't want people getting excited, and I don't want to make it excitable. The goal is to make it cost effective because the town bears the entire expense of townwide revaluations. The fact that so many years have gone by, that makes it a very high price tag. And as I just described, the assessment roll runs mid-year to mid-year, so it will affect 2 budgets, and that alone, if there were no other increases and revenues stayed the same, you would be breaking the tax cap 2 years in a row just to afford that project. I don't think that was ever their intent, and I think that there's other ways that we can do it, and I have really been talking and reaching out to my colleagues in the state and talking to them the last number of years to pull together what would be the solution to that high price tag to the town, and that's our taxpayers, right? When we say the town, I'm looking at a town board that's been elected to govern them, but those are our taxpayers. And it's going to come out of the town tax line. And I just think that there's other ways that we can do it if we're given enough time to make it happen, because time has gone by. We are now fully staffed in our office as of last week.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited and I'm so encouraged, and I am really looking to the future with excitement of what we can do and what we can accomplish with the team that we have put together. And there's a lot of promise here. And what I want to do is involve the public, which is why we're getting the online software for people that are going to be reporting back to us. We'll do a soft launch on that, and then we'll be ready to really engage the public in the activity. As much as possible, we want them to understand it, but it's a very technical process. So we might not be able to educate everyone to the level they wish to, but we're certainly going to be giving it a try.
I don't think you've been properly staffed since I went back,
Thank you.
which is going on 4 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time
That
coming.
hurts.
It has been a long time coming, so we've dug a little bit of a hole we need to get out of, and that's going to be, that and COVID is my explanation for the delay. We haven't been able to fill that position, and COVID brought on so many other things we had to do in addition to what we usually do. I really feel like 2023 is going to be the turning point where we're going to be back on track to pick up the thought of that project again.
Well, Braden's going to be here later to do HR at 5 o'clock. It's too bad he's not here right now, because if he was, he might be twitching, because the work that the 2 of you have done the last 2 years in vetting candidates for these positions, then hiring them, and then just the bad luck that they've walked out the door, for good reasons, relocating or whatever, and you just, when you think you've got your staff, or full staff, it's been quite a ride.
It has been.
Yeah.
It has been.
And the last thing I'll say before we hand the baton to Paul, unless the other board members have questions or comments on assessment, is that, if anybody who's watching this live or in the future, if they're like, well, wait a minute, 2004 is the last full rebuild. That's 18 years ago. I'm sure you'll get into that more, in a future date when you present to the town board, but I've looked at that, and there's very rational, logical reasons why that has been. We won't get into details tonight, but, there's been reasons why.
There has been.
And I think those reasons are getting to the point where they are exhausting themselves, and we can move forward. I like your strategy.
Yes, thank you. Well said. They are exhausting themselves.
Yes. All right,
Thank you for your time.
anybody else?
Thank you, Don.
All right, Paul?
All right, we'll talk about finance and just move over to that screen, my department. Part-time personnel, dropped that from 6 to 3,000. That is, I think there's a possibility we may need help from some former employees. We've used Sandy Stringer parts of this year. Next year, we're actually going to have Carol Capitello, who's retiring. We may need her to come back from time to time to help our new payroll supervisor. Compensation employees, that includes my 4 employees, which are the town accountant, accounts payable clerk, and payroll supervisor. As I just said, Carol's going to retire in January after 14 years of service. So there will be some overlap between the new person and Carol in early 2023. And we also have Paula Friedman, who is also an office account clerk. She handles grants and some bill pay responsibilities. She's involved in the construction, letters of credit, and the deposits, so she works closely with engineering and community development. So she's been a good employee for many years as well. Our town accountant is fairly new. She started about a year and a half ago, taking over for Sandy Stringer, who had been here for many years. The capital purchases category, under computer equipment and licensing, as Donna just explained, these items are items that were previously in the IT budget. This year we decided to break them out by department. In my case, it includes some Microsoft licenses and the replacement of 1 computer. So that's budgeted $2,750. Under seminars and conferences, that includes attendance to the Association of Towns, GFOA events, not only for myself, but for employees as needed. Fixed asset software, that's up 6,500. The software we're currently using is not integrated with Munis, our main financial software. It's a standalone package. It's pretty outdated, so I put in $6,500 to try to replace it. I don't know if we'll actually go with the Munis module or try to do it with something else, but it's something I would like to look at sometime in early 2023. Financial consultants, that includes fees that we pay to our actuary. The town is required to have our other post-employment benefits valued on an annual basis, and that's basically identifying how much liability the town has for health insurance paid to retirees and some of the other benefits that they receive. And it's a pretty significant number. It also includes Municipal Solutions, who is our bond consultant, so they help us with our bond anticipation borrowings, bond anticipation note borrowings, and our serial bond borrowings. So they work closely with our attorney, Harris Beach, whenever we borrow money. And it also includes Lifetime Benefit Solutions, who handle our HRA and HSA accounts. We pay them on an annual basis to help us out. Office supplies at $5,100 is flat year to year. Machine lease is a copier. Software license fees. That actually is up significantly. It's up $37,000. The town uses Munis, which is the full financial system for payroll, accounts payable, general accounting, budgeting, billing, receivables. It's the whole package. We've decided to, this was a decision that was made with the IT department in conjunction with the town board, we decided to actually allow Tyler Technology, the parent company who owns Munis, to third-party host the data and the software. Now, based on an analysis that Steve Peace's department did, it appears as though even though it's a jump on my budget, we think overall it's actually going to be a savings for the town. And it also adds a certain level of security. So that process is actually underway, actually as we speak. This week, Munis is actually building the database in our test and train system. So it actually will be available for us to start testing the software in about, actually on Monday. So we'll be able to start testing and test and train. And then the plan is to actually go live with it about the second week in November. So we're moving in conjunction with this third-party hosting. We're actually changing versions from 11.3 to 2021.5, which actually is a jump of about 4 or 5 levels. So it actually will be a pretty big change and a different look to the whole software. The computer system administration charge, that's an annual fee. We also pay to Tyler Technology for system support. It does cover things like they're doing this week, like the data transfer. It's actually covered by this fee. So whenever there's an upgrade, it will be covered. Then I budgeted $3,000 for software conversion costs. As I just explained, we are switching to version 2021.5. So I do have some training scheduled for this year, but I budgeted $3,000 for some additional training as needed. As I said, it will be a big change. And the other expenditure item is the amount that we pay to our independent audit firm. We do use Webster and Barr to do the annual financial audit for the town. In addition, they use some agreed upon procedure engagements for both the court and the town clerk and receiver of taxes. It also includes some money for a single audit. Single audits are required whenever the town spends over $750,000 of federal funds. And it looks like 2023 we will be over that amount because of the ARPA money, which we are designating both to the grants that we did a couple of weeks ago, and $2.5 million to the wastewater treatment plant project, phase 2. We'll probably put us over that 750 for 2023. So that's about it for finance. Any questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Paul.
Yep. All right, next up we have HR. Right on time.
Hey, he's moving up to the podium. One thing I will say about this, Paul, that software license fees, which we had some town hall workshops and discussions on this in the last month or two that kind of explain it. That is one of those items where the one-year budget process in government doesn't do justice to the savings that it does for an organization over a 1 to 5 year period.
That is correct.
So, anyway, that's it. Trade is at the podium.
All right, Honorable Town Board, the 2023 proposed human resources budget is maintenance of effort, $144,000, $125. It is $525 higher than the current budget, which is the equivalent of 0.4%. So I consider that to be tax cap compliant, and that's one of the things that I like to pride myself on, is not increasing overhead expenses, although sometimes it's required. As with most customer service facing agencies, our largest expense is personnel, being me, that personnel. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. I would point out, I ran a couple of numbers for this discussion. So in the last 12 months, we've been very busy with recruitment, and I would say more so than it would appear to be historical. I didn't have a chance to pull data, kind of over a long historical period, but in the last 12 months, we've held 25 recruitments for positions. We've hired 135 employees. And of that, only 55 were seasonal. So that's 75 permanent hires in the last 12 months. And we conducted 265 civil service transactions, which would be inclusive of hire, terminate, promote, make permanent, position change as well. So that 135 hires, we have 355 employees total as of today on payroll. That breaks down into 217 part-time, of which 55 are seasonal. So right now in July with summer camp, this is really our high water mark because we have all the camp counselors employed at this point, but they are only 55. So keep in mind that the seasonal variation isn't that huge. 148 full-timers that break down into 51 in the blue-collar union, 37 in the white-collar union, 32 non-union, and 28 police professionals. So I just thought I would provide some indicators of what we've been doing, which is basically a lot of recruitment, onboarding, and processing employees. With that, I'm open to any questions that you have about any particular line items or my approach to the submitted budget.
I have none. Thank you.
No question.
That's quite a volume of hires.
Thank you, Paul, because I wrote as fast as I did.
Yeah, and I couldn't capture it all. I appreciate that.
Brady, let me ask you this. If I understand it correctly, we have 148 full-time personnel in town. We have 217 part-time, 55 of those are seasonal. You said that the recruitment, placement, vetting, all that very robust process in the last year has resulted in 75 permanent position hires?
Yes, correct.
That's 50% of our full-time staff.
Permanent includes permanent part-timers as well.
Okay.
So it's,
Yeah.
but it is to say that the majority of that 135 are different from just the seasonal summer process, to give it some context. So if I didn't give it context, a logical conclusion would be is, every summer we staff up, every fall kids go back to school, normal process. I don't know if it's a generational thing, whether it's the overall economy, but there has certainly been, a lot of turnover, and turnover is just a number. Depending on the circumstances, it can be a bad thing, or it could be a great thing. But it is a thing that requires time and effort, and hopefully we're doing a good job at meeting the hiring goals of the departments that I serve, as well as the overall talent and quality of the workforce, which I think is very good, just for anecdotal feedback.
Well, that makes more sense, because there's 310 full-time and permanent part-time employees, so 75 in the last year is more like a little under 25%. And I know COVID, we've seen why a lot of people are leaving, they're retired in many cases. Okay. That's all I got.
Changing of the guard, as they say. We have a lot of new hires, and I think the board's done a wonderful job in the manner in which we have interviewed. And we made some great selections of new department heads. I really enjoyed the process. I think it's a very, very, very good process, and we're seeing what has developed since we implemented that process with the people that have been hired, with the exception of you, of course.
Are you pointing at
There's
Brady?
always a bad.
No, I'm pointing at you.
Me? Oh, well, yeah, well, don't get me going on the fact that elections are just popularity contests. It doesn't mean you have the skills when you get
Well, yeah.
hired by the community. Braden, all jokes aside, I gotta tell you something. I for one, am very happy you're sitting in the seat you've been sitting in for almost 2 years to help and navigate this organization through what would 9 new department heads?
Yeah.
You know, and you gotta hire smart, and part of hiring smart is the robust process that you vet candidates and all that, and I wanna thank you for what you brought to this organization, and appreciate it.
I second that, sir.
Thank you.
He is a very witty person, I want to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's Lisa's concern. Huh?
Well, I was just gonna say, thank you sincerely, and I continue to really enjoy working here and the people that work in this organization, so I'm very happy.
Thank you, sir.
Good to hear.
Well, tell ya, Chief, that's a tough act to follow, isn't it?
Can I stay here or you want me up there? I'll go up there.
Unless camera-wise, well,
Actually, we can see that
Stay right
screen.
yeah, don't. Okay.
Step is police.
Afternoon, everyone. So, overall speaking, we have a 0 headcount increase budget. The majority of the changes to the budget are just to reflect cost percentage increases, mostly through the supply chain. But we'll kind of go through this line by line just to give you some of the major talking points. Obviously, as Brady pointed out, a large component of my budget is headcount for personnel. So that experiences an increase of 117,931. 25,000 of that is due to the new captain's position. About 71,000 of that is due to contractual step increases, and the remainder of that is the contractual percent increase negotiated by the town board with the collective bargaining agreement. So that has our head count at 34 sworn, actually 33 out of that line item, that would be the 34th, 4 civilian and 1 part-time. The next couple lines appear to have increases and decreases, and there is a little bit of a change, but the major changes here are to reflect accounting practices. One of the issues we had with the way holiday pay, overtime, and now a new comp buy-down line were being accounted for before. It made it hard to track how those were being expended. Essentially, going back a couple years, the comp buy-down came out of the overtime line, so we would be tracking on course to be under budget on overtime, and then in December, when the contractual buy-down happened, it would essentially be a balloon payment. So what we've done is we separated that out to be its own line item to make sure that that's accounted for appropriately. For overtime, generally speaking, there was a $25,000 increase requested. That has to do with the increase in rate for the officers that are working. So we don't anticipate the hours reducing, but the rate that we're paying them is increasing. So there's a slight increase to that budget line. We inserted a new budget line called police reimbursed overtime. I'm anticipating that at about $50,000. Any expenditure out of that line would be reimbursed on the revenue side. So that's not an increase in budget, it's a line item to account for any charged overtime in relation to like special events and things like that. Again, that's still an ongoing conversation with the board as far as how that's going to be implemented through the fee schedule, but for the budget process, I'm using the $50,000 mark based on the analysis we did during the last year's discussion on event costs. Clerical salaries, again, no increase in head staff there, or head count there for staff. Overtime is minimal, and that's more to reflect as needed. Clerical part-time is just to reflect, it's not exactly clerical part-time, that's our 1 part-time employee we have to assist with fleet coordination. Crossing guards, we still have a responsibility of Clem North and Clem South to have crossing guards posted for morning and afternoon. So there's only 1 location that's still active. We have responsibility there. The next two line items, tobacco compliance and SRO overtime, are both reimbursed. So again, they appear as expenditures on this portion of the budget, but they would be completely reimbursed on the revenue side for any expense out of that. And again, there's a increase there, more so based on the request that we've been getting from the school to have officers assist with events. So we have a process in place where any request from the school to have police officers present for overtime is billed to the school district, and that would be reflected in that line item. The computers is a new cost center approach, obviously the town undertook, so that $23,000 increase reflects shifting the other previous year's expenses to the departments. So that's our anticipated annual subscription cost and equipment cost. What that reflects are the approximately 40 users we have for licensing, and then doing a 4-year rotation on hardware to replace the current equipment that we have. No significant increases in the next few line items through capital purchases. Obviously, vehicles is a major talking point. Our fleet consists of 13 patrol vehicles and then the 6 administrative vehicles. Our patrol vehicles, we average about 30,000 miles a year on. So that puts us basically in a 4-year replacement cycle for the vehicles. So that essentially means a minimum of 3 vehicles a year for replacement. The reduction in that line is to reflect the anticipation of 2 of those being patrol and not having a setup cost that we saw last year. As I continue down, there are no real significant changes there. Office expenses, telephone miscellaneous, so most of these are slight increases due to supply chain increases in cost of goods. The other major increase that I made is kind of a guesstimate, fuel cost. As you see, it went from $60,000 this year to a estimated $120,000 for next year. That may be a little bit of an overestimation. Year to date, we're at $44,126 on our fuel cost for the police department. So I anticipate at the rate that the fuel expense is grown, that we are going to exceed the $60,000 this year, but it's a little bit hard to project what that number will be. So I anticipated $120,000 for next year, not knowing how that expense is going to work through. Again, clothing expenses took a little bit of an increase there as well, mostly due to supply chain issues and ballistic vest replacement. We're on a 5-year cycle for ballistic vest. That's manufacturer certified date, so every year we have a rotation of vests that need to be cycled out that coincide with officers being hired. So essentially what that does, it gives us an approximately $275,865 increase from 2022 to 2023 if you remove the reimbursed line items. And of that, the officer salary increase is approximately 43%, and fuel is approximately 21%. So those are the significant cost increases. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
I know that we had talked about previously overtime for the police officers covering special events. And I believe I just heard you say that we're still having conversations with respect to the fee schedule. So where's the revenue being tracked right now for, say, the carnival, any school events, and those sorts of things? And specifically the carnival, was there an agreement or discussions that took place with the fire department regarding coverage?
Yes, sir. So currently, anything related to the school district is billed through the current agreement we have with the school district for the SRO reimbursement process. So
Even if it's a non-SRO.
correct,
function.
yes. If they request 3 officers, say for a school event,
Right.
we account for all of that expense through that billing process. For the fire department, the carnival in particular, there was a standing agreement with the fire department that they would pay a $3,000 flat fee for police presence and cost of overtime at the carnival. I looked back at some history of that, and there wasn't necessarily consistency of that being applied. This year, I re-engaged that conversation, and we came to an agreement of a $4,000 flat fee that they were going to pay for overtime related to the event. That doesn't reflect the total cost, but in the absence of the board voting on the fee structure that we're having discussions on going forward as to who's getting charged what dollar amount, I felt it appropriate to increase it from what the previous agreement was to cover some of the additional costs that we saw, and have some sort of reimbursement there. So there's a written agreement signed by the fire department. The overtime cost has been provided to finance, who is now billing the fire department for that expense.
So what percentage of the overtime for those officers was covered by that $4,000?
A little over 50%. The total cost, and again, so this isn't direct cost because some of that overtime was taken in comp time, but the total cost for overtime for the 4 days of the carnival, including the parade, was about $7,700. So the flat fee of $4,000 covered a little over 50%. And looking historically, that was in line with what has happened previously. Under other carnival details, the overtime was between $600 and $7,500 based on what I saw. That wasn't billed consistently. So that was paid by the fire department in probably 2 of the last 4 years that it was held and not paid other years. I can't speak to why that's the case or the historical aspect of that, but the charge to them has been about 50% of the total overtime expended based on what I saw.
So the cost has stayed relatively the same even when they had special police coverage, right?
Correct. And so the only real change this year for us in coverage was the actual parade itself, which overlapped with the pre-existing detail that we had in place. So, and again, when it comes to public events, as part of the discussion we're having, it depends on the event and the timing of the event. The example would be the Memorial Day parade cost 0 overtime because it's a daytime weekday parade where we had available staffing to do that without costing overtime. When you have evening events or weekend events, we don't have the same on-duty staffing that we can flex to cover that. So
Right.
it really depends on the type of event moving forward.
I was just using the carnival as an example, and I appreciate you presenting the historical information. I think it brings to light that we have historically been paying approximately $6,000 to $7,000, or billing, or that's what the charge was to the taxpayers for the overtime coverage, even in years when we did in fact have the special police there.
Correct.
And so.
Well, and John, I'll add just a little bit more color to that. 2 things is that, and Paul just said you've been back for 4 years. There was no Fireman's Carnival in 20 and 21 because of COVID. When we looked back in 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, that was 5 years of Fireman Carnivals. We had 3 invoices, 3 of the 5 years, we billed the fire department $3,000 for that overtime. 2 of those times they paid us, 1 time they didn't, and the town wrote it off. 2 of those 5 years, we didn't bill the fire department. We really can't figure out why that schematic was in place, so
Right.
putting it in a different way, because it would be easy to have a narrative where, well, this, without the special police, this cost us more. Well, Chief just showed how the overtime for the police has been the same, really, during the 15 through 19, and then this 22. The difference is that compared to those previous 5 years, we did bill for the $4,000, half of it, and we'll get it. And I want to give Dolly McGuire, our town clerk, a lot of credit, because I think, Chief, when you talked to the fire department, you were able to show a resolution from this town board circa 2006 that really guided how the carnival was going to be handled between the fire department and the police. And this happens with organizations when turnover of personnel. Why that resolution, that local law, whatever, was not followed in 15 through 19, I don't know. But it was nice to pull that out as a reference point when you were able to talk with the fire department. So that's a little more color to that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I like my documentation, don't I, Chief?
You do, sir. Absolutely.
The other question I had, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed another one.
You can ask as many as you want, we're out of schedule it.
So, I believe the other town departments they've signed on to the vehicle leasing. And what is the police department's position on that, joining along with that company as far as leasing goes?
Yeah, so the conversation has been going on for a while. The initial proposal that they provided included the marked fleet as well as the unmarked fleet. I worked with Paul to look through the formulas and kind of refine the proposal to see if it would work for the police department. And it, on its face, didn't appear to be a cost savings with the marked fleet. So what we've done is we've asked for an evaluation on the unmarked fleet to see if there's a potential cost saving there. Part of the issue with the marked fleet is the rotation of the vehicles with the vehicle setup. It's not just the striping and the lights, it's the cages, it's the MDT, the weapons mounts, all of the other configuration that goes into it. The setup cost is significant each time we rotate a vehicle. So when we looked at that, again, I don't want to quote a number off the top of my head, but over the 10-year program life, the savings was minimal. And it didn't seem that it would be prudent to transition the entire program. That quote on the administrative side has been delayed with the turnover in the police department staff. It's one of the things that's on our action items to take care of. But we'll have to see what the proposal is based on the unmarked fleet, not the total fleet.
Kenny?
Any comments on special police or animal control?
So I guess the things to highlight for the animal control, we're taking a collaborative approach to the animal control. There isn't a single full-time employee. There's a collection of part-time employees. One is focused on the administration of the unit and reestablishing the police department and doing the hiring of other part-time on-call personnel. So we have currently 4 part-time employees under the animal control functioning, and the majority of that is for on-call. So there isn't really any significant changes to the budget. I just figured I'd highlight the approach we're taking now that it's moved back under the police department for administration. For the special police, obviously, this will be the first year that there'll be no line items for the special police as far as a taxable expense.
Jenny? No?
Where does the brand new vehicle go?
So far, none of the assets have been transferred. So I've been working through for accountability of the special police items. There's still there's about 6 radios that we're still looking to identify before we do asset transfers. So I've been working with finance to account for everything that's on their asset list. And then it'll come to the board for your approval on moving the assets. The intention is all of the vehicles and trailers, usable equipment, the request is going to be that it gets transferred to the police department for use Essentially, all of the functioning it was intended for, we're still doing. It's designed to assist with traffic control, public events, and that's all still a responsibility of the police department. So that will be the request when it comes to the board. And then there's a number of items that just built up over time that can be surplus and disposed of. So once I have accountability of all the items that are listed, then it'll come to the board shortly for your direction.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
No questions, thank you, Chief.
Yep.
The only question I have, and it might be more of a Paul question, this is kind of one of my pet peeves of mine, is that I want to make sure whatever we present on the screen and whatever, that there's not another slide that contradicts what we just showed, because then that gets confusing for the board, it gets confusing for the citizens. With that preface, I took a look at a presentation that's going to be done later this afternoon, and it had the police department as an annual cost to the town of Webster taxpayers of $7 million. But this budget is showing about $4.5 million. Why would, is that because of benefits, Paul?
Yeah, the benefits are later in the budget.
Okay.
At the tail end of general fund, right about here. And the police benefits are mixed in to retirement contribution, Social Security. Cash option, hospitalization, medical insurance, retiree medical insurance, dental insurance,
Yeah.
HSA, HRA for retirees inactive.
And I know,
It's
Paul,
mixed in.
what's that?
It's mixed in with our other benefits.
I understand it, I just want to make sure, because obviously, you know, maybe I'm overthinking this. If I'm watching this at home, live, or in attendance, or I watch a tape in the future, and I'm like, huh, Chief showed a budget that is, you know, proposed for 2023 at 4.8 million, and then once you get the revenues that you get, it actually is down to 4.6 million. How can that be when a presentation later on is using as a point of reference, 7 million is what the police department costs? I don't know, and I'm not trying, this is not a gotcha question, I want to make sure that it is that accurate? Is it?
Yeah.
No, I mean, is it 7 million?
Yeah, it's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah,
I feel better.
Just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
For people to understand, the retirement contribution to the state is a mandated percentage that the state provides the town. I'd say that it's approximately 30% of their salary is
Sure.
part of the, and it depends on which tier the employees are in. So we have a mix of tier 2 and tier 6 employees that contribute to that. And then the healthcare obviously is through the collective bargaining with the union and part of consortium.
Yeah, and Chief, I'll tell you this, we could go back to the previous 3 presentations today and take their bottom line budget and say, well, that's not really 500,000 for assessment because it's more like 800,000 because of what Paul is showing.
Yeah.
But no one's doing a presentation later on referencing the assessment budget.
Yeah, no, and I get that. And really what it comes down to is it's part of the discussion of long-term management of personnel, retention of people beyond 20 years, so that the retirement contributions aren't starting to stack and
Sure.
it becomes manageable, stays manageable. So that's part of the long-term management of the organization.
Well, Chief, I'll tell you what, you know, we let off with some softballs, the first 3. I hope that assessment, finance, and human resources doesn't take that out of context. But they're lower dollar budgets, and they were relatively flat. You came in as 4th, and, you know, the police department, everybody knows this, it's a larger budget, and there's an increase. I appreciate the way you explained it, and I guess this is as good a time as ever to say to anybody in attendance or watching at home, today's July 28th. These are proposed budgets for 23. It's a month and a half out before we adopt a preliminary budget. Is that correct, Paul?
That's about right, Tom.
Okay, so,
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I just wanted to add there is, like I said earlier this week in a different interview, public safety is a resource-intensive expenditure for a town, for any municipality. More so for public safety because of the 24/7 coverage. It's not just a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 business hours department. It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So for people to understand that, if you take 18 patrol officers, that's 6 assigned to each platoon, which is 8-hour shifts covering 24 hours. Not all 6 can work at the same time. There has to be a staggering of those employees so that they're there 7 days a week and have days off in between. So it is a little bit more comprehensive than just having a unit that's there Monday through Friday. So I just make that clear.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
Anything else? No?
Thanks, Dennis.
All right. Well, Chris, that's a tough act to follow, isn't it, Chris?
I'll do my best.
Chris Plano. Arts and recreation.
Okay. Couple of notes just before I get started. The overall budget for the department does not have any additional staff changes to our current department structure, so there's no additional headcount or any changes to that. Overall, I know Tom, you said at the beginning, to keep things flat over the 3 departments out of all the account lines that we have, the budget from an expense standpoint is up $54,000, and our revenue over the 3 is just under $9,000 less than we had in 22, and I'll go over that some more in detail as we go through. Just as a update for 2022, just to kind of give you a 6-month benchmark as to where we are. Currently, we are about 48% of our expense, so we're under that 50% threshold halfway through the year, which is obviously where we like to be. And our revenue is over that 50%, which is obviously good. We're at about 64% collected. So from a ratio, that's a very positive thing. We'll start out with the program for the aging, which is our senior department. It's probably the easiest one that I have to go through. Really, there's no major changes within our expense. The only major change that we have in this is our provision line, which has been reduced by about $8,000. That's a direct result of just participation numbers continue to sort of stay level after COVID. So we don't see the number of participation that we had in years past. That also shows on the revenue side where we have a reduction in revenue from $60,000 down to $50,000. The only other highlight that I'll change to this is we now also have our senior program personnel now is correctly structured. For the last few budget cycles, we had people in different lines. So now we have Daphne Gioka, who is our recreation supervisor. She's coming directly out of the program for 18 months. Onto recreation. I'm not going to go through every one of these lines. I'm going to hit a number of the larger lines or anywhere. I think there's got to be some explanation as to why there's some changes. First one is 10087. It's our administrative support part-time. We do have a slight reduction in that, around $7,000. That's a result of the new staff structure that we have in place in our front office that our office manager, Colleen Ferguson, has implemented, so we've been able to see some savings there. Our seasonal personnel line, 10097, we do have an increase in that. Again, that's basically based on minimum wage, as that continues to drive our cost. As been explained through the other presentations, 20011, our computer equipment and licensing, that is our software cost for 9 full-time and part-time computer licensing. That also includes 1 new kiosk or new computer for our front-end kiosk. So that's a new budget line for us. We do have an expense in there for fitness equipment capital cost of $23,000. That's for new equipment for the fitness center, specifically spin bikes, as we try to jumpstart our fitness membership and continue to build on that. We do have the need for additional programs to be able to offer, and obviously that is one that we hear time and time again from our members and potential members that they'd like to see offered. 40067, this is, as Paul mentioned earlier in his presentation, from the computer tech support. This 19,000 now is for our registration system, which is Vermont Systems. Vermont Systems is the parent company of RecTrack, which is where all of our registration goes through. This is now housed in the cloud. This has been successfully done thanks to the town board's approval. Now this is being done and managed in the cloud. I will say in the last 2 months, we have had 0 glitches with RecTrack, and every one of the updates has been done without any issues or conflicts, no downtime. So we've seen a much better system now that that is done through the cloud. 40226, custodial supplies. This is a slight increase as we now have moved into the facility stage of purchasing supplies for both town hall and court. 227, day trips. From a cost standpoint, this is being driven by fuel and also from the school district, the cost for bus drivers. So we are seeing an increase in that. We are seeing several of our trip locations changing their price structure. So as they continue to increase, the staff is looking at alternative ways to be able to save those costs with different trips. 40300, that's refuse pickup. This was a contract that was up this year, so we had to renew. We did go out, received several quotes, and we ended up with the lowest quote that we did take actually stayed with Waste Management. The good news is this is now including recycling for our facility, which is again something that we had a very big, I'll say, request for within the facility. So now we do have a recycling option within the facility, and Waste Management takes care of that for us. 40752, utilities, natural gas is a large jump. This is really just a clerical error more than anything. That 24,000 is about on par with what we would normally pay. However, in the past, in the budget cycle, this has just been covered in different areas. So this year, we decided to put it all back together and put it all in one line. So that's why that jumped from about 5,000 to 24.
Natural gas is up substantially
Right. So,
as part of it.
and you'll see that in the park side as well. From a revenue side, on the program side, 2003, that's our program line. We've increased that by 10,000 just over the last 2 years. That program line has increased just about $40,000. The staff has done a fantastic job of one, programming as well as increasing our exposure. So we've been able to hit the mark the last 2 years. So increasing it by another 10,000 seems very reachable. Remaining lines pretty much stayed flat or had slight increases. We really didn't have a lot of change to those lines, as I think we've adjusted those to where they seem to be the most realistic at this point. 2035 fitness classes and 2045 fitness memberships. Those are the two that we're still trying to, track and be able to get an understanding of where we're at. 2035, the fitness class line, we reduced by about 10,000. In 2045 fitness membership, we reduced by about 10,000. Currently, we're at about 370 membership units that are billed on a monthly basis. Just for a reference, to show that our growth is going, our low point, just as COVID was beginning, was around 230. So again, we're not going back at a fast clip, but we are growing back. And again, as I've shared with this board over time, there is a ceiling that I think we're going to reach, especially with the loss of the Xerox campus and employees at that facility. There is a ceiling that I don't think we're going to be able to reach as high as what it once was when Xerox was at its peak, so to speak. That's it for rec. We'll move on to parks. 2011, that's the computer equipment licensing. That takes care of 3 staff. We have 3 staff that have computer needs between our parks director, foreman, and our facilities. 20059, this is our capital improvements. This is down this year. We don't have as many capital improvements. We really have only 2 major projects that we've scheduled. One is for the replacement of the exterior doors at Liberty Lodge. Last year, the town board approved the capital improvement for exterior doors at Curry Building, and those are actually being done, I think it's in the next 2 weeks. So next year, we had identified Liberty Lodge to have 2 new exterior doors put in, along with some funds put together or put aside for park signage. Again, as I've explained to the town board, it's the hope that we start to sort of change the look of our park signage, not only entrance signs, but park signs within, so we've got some money dedicated for that. 20063 is capital purchase of equipment. We just have one piece of equipment we're looking to replace, that's our infield groomer. It's about $27,000. That infield groomer maintains and takes care of the seven softball fields that we have on our 2 campuses between Chiota and Kent Park. That machine currently is 10 plus years old. It's on its 2nd engine. That engine has 1,000 plus hours. And during the months of May, June, July, August, and September, it runs 5 days a week, some days 7 days. 20064, that is our capital purchase park improvement line. That is state consistent. That is where we use for any of the items within any of the parks that we may have that require capital purchase. We're able to use it from that, so we've left that alone, and I believe that was initiated from the sale of basketball. 40101, as has been explained with some of the other presentations, that is the vehicle lease expense. This is for a new vehicle for our facilities department. For the last, since we've had facilities, we've sort of been, I'll say, vehicle sharing with our park staff, and it's left our park staff short on a number of days where we've had to send people out either in Kubota or just drop people, which we don't like to do because we like to have access to a vehicle. So this will allow us to have a dedicated work van set for our facility staff, so that we're there wherever they need to be. They'll be able to have a vehicle and also the equipment stored within. 40300, that's the refuse pickup, same as what I indicated earlier. This is on the park side. Our parks revenue, lodges are slightly up as we see continued growth in rentals, so we raised that slightly to 105,000. At this point, I don't see any significant revenue from sale of equipment. We don't anticipate having any vehicles go to auction. We do have some equipment that will be going to auction in 23. We don't anticipate, like we did last year, of having our tractor go to auction, which will be going later this fall. But we don't have any large equipment that we anticipate going, just small equipment. The only other thing that I will bring up that I wanted to make sure I noted on here, one of the recommendations that I'm going to have to the town board is the tennis courts that are at Chiota. Those are the original tennis courts that are at Chiota. They've been there since my days of working at Xerox. And there's been some minor refurbishing to those courts. Those are the only 2 tennis courts that we have in town that the town maintains. Those are the only 2 outdoor courts that we have for pickleball, and as this town board, I'm sure, has heard, pickleball is an extremely popular sport in this town. So the courts are becoming, I don't want to say unplayable, but they're getting to the point that they're past repair. So it's my recommendation that in 23 we look at utilizing the Parkland Trust Fund to be able to do a refurbishment of those courts, both for tennis and pickleball, for a new surface and new fencing.
And that is actually in the budget. It's in the Parkland Trust Fund transfer to Capital Projects Fund. So as of right now, it's in there.
Question?
No, but I mean, and we had a precedent on this with the gym floor and the gym, right? That we went through the research with the state and all that, and Parkland Trust Fund could be used for that because of a lot of different technicalities that all slotted, so it could be used for those types of things. Yep. I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris. Next up, we have the Justice Court. Tom and David.
I got excited when he talked about court getting refurbished, but then I realized
guy.
I don't look forward to
This guy.
Wait to fall time?
Actually, we got new chairs for the court through the JCAP program, so that was very, very nice. So we're plasticized now. Justice's salary is up to you guys. Court clerks, we've got both the full-time and the part-time. If you note, what we did was we went from 2 full-time and 3 part-time to 3 full-time and 2 part-time with the retirement of one of our part-timers. This is something that we've talked about over the years, and every year it seemed like for a long time we were preparing for it, waiting for it, and preparing for it, and then we decided, well, this is getting goofy, so we'll take it out, and of course, as soon as you take it out, you need it. But it's something that we have always talked about getting back to, and we're happy we're here with the addition of Lynn in place of Kim, but Lynn as a full-timer, and Kim had gone from full-time with all sorts of knowledge to part-time with all sorts of knowledge. So if you look at that, you've got really about the swap of money going out of the part-time and into the full-time. Overtime is generally something that nobody takes except for compensation, whatever you call that comp time. So we do budget in case somebody takes it. It does happen, but you can see that we're low so far this year. The court security was really a part of a year calculation for going with either payment of special police and then turning it into the later where you get to number 40057 is talking about the court security contract with the armed security. The capital purchases, realistically, last year we calculated for 2 copiers because one especially was making unusual noises, and it seemed to me as if it was time to replace that. It's taken a fair time. We're actually waiting for one to come in, but only one is, in my mind, on its last legs. So the other 1,500 is for this coming year, 2023. It's a black and white Xerox copier, which we look forward to having. The one that we'll replace is the one that's in the courtroom for now, and then later it'll be the one in the clerk's room. It'll be interesting because it does count the number of copies, and we may be able to get reimbursed per copy from New York State. So that'll be an interesting, probably not money-making venture, but getting a few shekels back. Computer equipment and software licenses, that's new. It's kind of an out of the IT budget and into our budget type of thing. 6 licenses at the $350, 1 computer at the $1,400, gives you that $3,500. So yes, it's added, it's $3,500 more than we haven't had in our budget before. That's because it was taken out of the IT budget. Justice seminars and conference expenses, as you should have taken the hint by now. I'm departing, I will depart very soon after the beginning of the year. So whoever the new justice is won't have 35 years of experience and will need to attend some training. It is mandatory for all judges, but you might find that a new judge will appreciate as much training as possible. And the same thing with Lynn, the latest clerk that we brought on. Court interpreter expenses are reimbursed by Monroe County, so it comes and it goes, and it's not going to disappear because it really is zero. The court security, this is a calculation as it's set out there. Well, I don't know, maybe it's set up somewhere. Anyway, $45 per hour per person for armed service. Because we use the metal detector, my understanding is that is a requirement. When you've got people going through the metal detector, you need to have two armed, if they are armed at all. And then we're trying to be rational in our best usage of when to have those guards. And so if you calculate it out, you come out with about 56,000 a year. We're budgeting 50,000 because we don't think we'll use it for each and every piece of what we do. Credit card charges are actually covered by New York State. That's really an old budget line situation there. Office supplies, a hair of an increase. It tends to be, we do not run out and try and buy all sorts of stuff to wipe out our budgeted amount. We spend money for what we need. When we do order it, we order enough to get the best price. But some years you're a hair over, some years you're a hair under, and in COVID times you're almost wiped out. So. Copier and computer maintenance, hopefully with the new copiers, jumping that from 250 to 400, hopefully will not be needed, but we'll see how that goes. I think with the new one, we should be able to dodge the bullet on what in the world was that noise coming out of the copier repair guy. I think that's it in terms of our expenses. In terms of our revenue, we are anticipating 170,000. I haven't looked. I'm assuming nobody's seeing something crazy. I assume you'll let me know if you see something crazy. But we're anticipating 170,000 for revenue. Even though we are now into July, the amount that the town gets from the state is behind typically by 2 to 3 months. So the extrapolation seems that we'll be close to 170. It may be in the 160,000 range, but that's the best shot we can take. Any questions?
Jenny?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bill?
No,
Okay. Hey, Chief, as long as we have you here, and, what sticks out in the court budget is the big change in the last couple of years is paid security. And really an offshoot of that, it's not just paid security, it's armed security. And Chief, I know you were very helpful in getting some, the consultant, the sheriffs, the jailer association to come in and do an assessment. This really is spawned off of really the last 2.5 years. That court security has changed drastically in the last 2.5 years. I don't know of any other courts in Monroe County that have unarmed security.
Off the top of my head, I don't recall who's armed and who's not. I know for us, it became an issue when special police expressed safety concerns over it, so that put us into a position of analyzing it. So like you said, we utilized the Monroe County Sheriff's Court Bureau to come out and do an assessment of the court and the process that we use. And then we took their recommendation and tried to make a best practice for our operation. So
Right.
Essentially, like the judge highlighted, a weapons training station increases the staffing best practice to 2 people. So it may not be appropriate for all of the court process, but if that process is in place, then that's where that requirement comes from.
And I know as we were navigating this, I was getting calls on certain days from the public defender's office and the DA's office with concerns that their ADAs had said, hey, we're not comfortable being in the Webster court where the security is unarmed.
I think that was during that period of time, there was no security. The special police were not there at all. So we were on our own. other than at some point in time, Webster Police, based on that complaint, did send, an officer for some of our criminal dockets. But probably, I don't want to say for 3-4 months, at least, we had no security whatsoever, and the initial complaint was from the assistant district attorney at that time. Felt very uncomfortable that people were coming and going, and there was no security at all.
It's an interesting question too. I mean, you take out the metal detector and say, well, good, we don't need as much money now for an armed security, or you keep it in, then it costs you more, but are you more safe? It's
The tenor of the times kind of dictates what you have to do.
The tenor of the times, Judge, and I mean, that is, in 2019, you educated me on this. Certain people were showing up to court, escorted, I'll call it, by the sheriff's department with nice chains, not like that you buy at the store around your neck, but like chains on, from jail. Those same people now get appearance tickets and are walking into court.
if we're lucky.
Okay.
Right.
So, anyway, that's the big difference. Yes, sir. Oh, we're gonna. In fact, Karen, unless anybody else has any questions on the court or comments, Karen had said that we're gonna take a little break in between the budget from Justice Court to the 6 o'clock start, if you wanna call it, of the workshop. And I'm looking for Karen to say that is correct, then, that's what we're gonna do.
correct.
So with that being said, I think the TV will turn off for 10 minutes, and we'll be back on the air taping in 10 minutes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, judges. And I think more people will be filing into the room. I know.
Thank you.